Every spring, hundreds of thousands of sandhill cranes come to the Platte River in Nebraska on what is commonly considered one of Earth's greatest migrations. Most people enjoy watching from blinds along the river, from the roads, or designated viewing areas. But we thought perhaps the coolest way to observe this spectacle would be to fully immerse ourselves by finding a place to camp next to a roost. Then watch the cranes come into the river that evening, spend the night alongside them, and see the same birds off in the morning. In this video, we'll show you our experience. Along the way, we'll explore their history, the challenges they face, and what makes the Platte River so special to them. The mission was straightforward. Find a spot where cranes roost at night, one we could access without disturbing them, with a place to hide ourselves along the bank. We spent several days scouting areas I'd flagged ahead of time, looking for signs of activity. Most of the land along the Platte River is privately owned, but there are still a handful of public spots and some privately owned places you can view from for a fee. We checked out areas all along the Central Platte, but focused most of our effort near Kearney, the epicenter of the crane migration. After enough miles and enough scouting, we finally found a spot that checked all the boxes for our mission and looked like it had real potential. When the date arrived, we packed up our gear and hiked into the spot we'd chosen. We set up camp well back up into the trees out of sight, not just from the river, but from above. Cranes are creatures of habit, often returning to the same roost night after night, and we didn't want to stand out as something new. After getting camp situated, we made our way closer to the river, finding a spot with tall grass and brush for cover. Then we settled in, well before sunset, to make sure we were situated before they started coming in. Sandhill cranes have been on Earth for a very long time, among the oldest surviving bird species. They're often described as living fossils because they've changed relatively little over millions of years. However, determining exactly how long sandhill cranes have existed and how long they've been following their modern migratory patterns is difficult based on the fossil evidence available today. The fossil record for birds is generally sparse. Bird skeletons are lightweight and fragile, making them less likely to be fossilized. After death, birds are often scavenged or destroyed by predators. And if a bird dies in water, its buoyancy can prevent it from sinking and being quickly buried by sediment. Despite these challenges, a few crane fossils have been found in the rock record. You might hear people say that a 10-million-year-old crane fossil found in western Nebraska suggests how long sandhill cranes have been around. But that fossil is just a partial bone, making it difficult to confirm it belongs to a sandhill. Much more complete crane fossils have been discovered at Ash Fall fossil beds in northeastern Nebraska. While these were indeed cranes, they belong to the Balearic genus, relatives of today's crowned cranes found in Africa. Unlike sandhill cranes, these birds lacked an inflated sternum and the associated coiled trachea, which together produce the iconic trumpeting calls integral to flock communication during migration. For these reasons, experts believe the cranes found at Ash Fall were more sedentary and probably didn't migrate. The earliest undisputed sandhill crane fossil was found in Florida and estimated to be 2.5 million years old. While a fossil at this location doesn't provide a lot of insight on how long sandhill cranes have been migrating, it does show that they've been around for a very long time. The sandhill cranes that pass through Nebraska lift off from their wintering grounds in northern Mexico, Texas, and New Mexico. Following the Central Flyway, they begin their long journey north to their breeding territories. As they approach the 40th parallel, their broad migration corridor begins to narrow. Geography, weather, learned behavior, and instinct all funnel them into this concentrated path, leading straight into central Nebraska. This bottleneck is in large part because of the Platte River Valley, which offers exactly what the cranes need: wide, shallow channels for safe nighttime roosting, and a patchwork of wetlands and crop fields rich in food. Here, along a 150-mile stretch of the river, roughly 80% of the world's sandhill cranes will touch down. They spend 2 to 3 weeks resting, feeding, and regaining energy, often adding 20% of their body weight before continuing north. From Nebraska, they head north and fan out across their summer range, which stretches across Canada and Alaska. Some even go further still, crossing the Bering Strait into eastern Siberia. The Platte River is generally very shallow and wide, with sandbars out in the channel. These areas provide good protection from predators like coyotes. When we were scouting for potential roosting areas, we were looking for wide, shallow areas with many partially submerged sandbars, just like this spot we selected. Finally, the moment of truth. As the sun dipped low, cranes started lifting from the surrounding fields, circling overhead and scanning the river. As they flew along the river, you could see them looking around for friends to join. They would circle around and set up with the wind in their face, flying low and slow, looking for their spot. Once a few finally selected a spot to land, others started to join more quickly and in greater numbers, until sunset, when the flock in the river had reached a critical mass, and it looked as if all the birds in the area were being sucked into a black hole. Why the cranes picked this area for a significant stopover point is in no small part related to the Platte River and the fluvial processes which have shaped it. The geology of the Platte River is a story millions of years in the making, and it directly shapes why cranes roost here today. During the Eocene, sediment deposition continued eastward. The Shadron Formation, part of the White River Group, was deposited during this time, primarily in regions north of the modern Platte River's lower sections. The Oligocene saw the deposition of the Brule Formation and also part of the White River Group, characterized by fluvial deposits interbedded with volcanic ash layers. If you watch the Pine Ridge Trail video, you'd recognize many of these sediments. Significant geological changes occurred during the Miocene, notably the deposition of the Ogallala Group across much of Nebraska. These sediments consist of sand, silt, clay, and gravel, originating from the eroding Rocky Mountains and spread extensively over the Great Plains. Much of the state's notable groundwater resides within the open pore space of the sediments in this group. In the Pliocene, continued uplift of mountain cores led to intensified erosion, stripping away earlier deposits. The resulting sediments were transported to Nebraska, leading to the deposition of the Broadwater Formation. Throughout the Pleistocene and into the Holocene, glacial and interglacial cycles influenced the Platte River's course and sediment load. Although glaciers did not cover all of Nebraska, meltwater from northern ice sheets contributed to fluvial activity, reworking existing sediments and shaping the modern river valley on the eastern side of the state. This central section of the Platte River has braided channels, which means there's a division of a single trunk channel into a network of branches and the growth and stabilization of intervening bars. These form for a number of factors, but I'll cover the three most important. First is erodible banks. If bank erosion is prohibited by sediment cohesion or vegetation, the process that allow for the braid bar development will be rendered inoperative. Sediment transport and abundant load are also important. Braided bars transport large volumes of bed load, and much of the channel shifting is promoted by temporary deposition of sediment in bars. Finally, rapid and frequent variation in flow plays a major role. Fluctuating discharge increases the magnitude of alternating erosion and deposition patterns, a necessary ingredient for braiding. All three of these factors influence one another. For example, the high flows that historically surged through here in spring would rework many of the larger sandbars and banks. This reduced vegetation, which in turn made the sediment more mobile, reinforcing the braided structure. Unfortunately, all three of these factors have been impacted in recent history. Erodible banks have become more stable due to woody encroachment and denser vegetation, including the invasive Phragmites. Sediment load has decreased, partially from the added stability, but also due to dams, especially on the North Platte. Canal diversion structures also slow the river and cause it to drop its sediment load, and canals paralleling the river have altered the flow patterns and surface runoff. Variability in flow has also been affected by development that reduces peak flows and controls their timing. Levees and elevated roads limit the river's ability to meander across its floodplain. Changes in vegetation patterns, snowpack levels in the Rockies, and the timing of snowmelt all play a role. As the river changes, it means loss of favorable roosting habitat to the cranes. The good news is, it's not all doom and gloom. There have been many conservation efforts to help address these issues. Multiple organizations have been working to improve and maintain habitat for the cranes. They're pushing to keep water in the river when it matters most, managing woody encroachment, mechanically disrupting vegetation on bars, and more. One of the major threats are power lines that cross or run alongside the river. In low light, they're nearly invisible, and fatal collisions are common. But work is being done, like adding visual markers and near ultraviolet light devices that make the lines visible to birds at night. Also, despite the headwinds mentioned earlier, sandhill crane populations are strong. Maybe part of that is thanks to the abundance of spilled grain in surrounding fields. But it's also likely a testament to the conservation work happening along the Platte. As the sun disappeared and the night went totally dark, the cranes didn't turn off. There was plenty of chattering and the occasional calls of one or more flying overhead. We did our best to sleep with all their noise throughout the night, but I think both us and the birds spent most of the night anticipating the sun. The roost we spent the night by was full of early risers. As nautical twilight arrived, the birds started to stir. By the time civil twilight rolled around, they took off, well before the sun had actually crested the horizon. Carpe and diem, I guess. Most left in two big waves, flying out to nearby fields for the day. Some didn't go far either, just over the trees to the field right next to the river. As the sun finally started to show, more and more cranes flew past us, coming from other roosts both upstream and down. They arrived in smaller, scattered groups the night before, but the morning exodus was almost synchronized. Both moments were really amazing to watch. Camping with the cranes may have been a micro-adventure, but it felt like a macro experience. Seeing them come in, hearing them throughout the night, and watching those same birds take off in the morning. It was incredible. If you've never seen the Sandhill crane migration, it's worth putting on your list.